Have you ever encountered the spirit of Amalecch? This is a spirit that wants to sabotage you, undermine you, and utterly destroy you. David encountered the Amalekites, and they had taken over Ziglag and taken away all of their wives and children off as captives, as hostages, and burned Ziglag to the ground. How do you know when you're encountering the spirit of Amalecch whether you should step back and step away or stand your ground and fight? David inquired of the Lord and sought his mind and his heart and his will, and he got his marching instructions from the Lord. Listen in and find out more about how to deal with the spirit of Amalecch. Welcome to the Daily Audio Torah. Today is May 21st. Now let's continue our journey reading through the entire Bible in 1 year. This week we are reading from the Israel Bible for the Old Testament and from the King James for the New Testament. Leviticus 23 to 44. Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel thus, in the 7th month, on the 1st day of the month, you shall observe complete rest, a sacred occasion commemorated with loud blasts. You shall not work at your occupations, and you shall bring an offering by fire to Hashem." Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Mark, the 10th day of this 7th month is the Day of Atonement. It shall be a sacred occasion for you. You shall practice self-denial, and you shall bring an offering by fire to Hashem. You shall do no work throughout that day, for it is a day of atonement, on which expiation is made on your behalf before Hashem your God. Indeed, any person who does not practice self-denial throughout that day shall be cut off from his kin. And whoever does any work throughout that day, I will cause that person to perish from among his people. Do no work whatever. It is a law for all time throughout the ages in all your settlements. It shall be a Sabbath of complete rest for you, and you shall practice self-denial. On the 9th day of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you shall observe this your Sabbath." Hashem spoke to Moses, saying, "Say to Bnei Israel, on the 15th day of this 7th month, there shall be the festival of Sukkot to Hashem to last 7 days. The first day shall be a sacred occasion. You shall not work at your occupations. 7 days you shall bring offerings by fire to Hashem. On the 8th day you shall observe a sacred occasion and bring an offering by fire to Hashem. It is a solemn gathering. You shall not work at your occupations. Those are the set times of Hashem that you shall celebrate as sacred occasions, bringing offerings by fire to Hashem, burnt offerings, meal offerings, sacrifices, and libations on each day, what is proper to it. Apart from the Sabbaths of Hashem, and apart from your gifts, and from all your votive offerings, and from all your free will offerings that you give to Hashem. Mark, on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the yield of your land, you shall observe the festival of Hashem to last 7 days, a complete rest on the 1st day and a complete rest on the 8th day. On the 1st day you shall take the product of Hadar trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Hashem your God 7 days. You shall observe it as a festival of Hashem for 7 days in the year. You shall observe it in the 7th month, as a law for all time throughout the ages. You shall live in booths 7 days. All citizens in Israel shall live in booths, in order that future generations may know that I made Bnei Israel live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I, Hashem, your God." So Moses declared to the Israelites the set times of Hashem. 1 Samuel 29:1-31:13. The Philistines mustered all their forces at Aphek, while Israel was encamping at the spring in Israel. The Philistine lords came marching, each with his units of hundreds and of thousands, and David and his men came marching last with Achish. The Philistine officers asked, "Who are those Hebrews?" "Why, that's David, the servant of King Saul of Israel." Achish answered the Philistine officers, "He has been with me for a year or more, and I have found no fault in him from the day he defected until now." But the Philistine officers were angry with him, and the Philistine officers said to him, "Send the man back. Let him go back to the place you assigned him. He shall not march down with us to the battle, or else he may become our adversary in battle. For with what could that fellow appease his master, if not with the heads of these men? Remember, he is the David of whom they sang as they danced. Saul has slain his thousands, David his tens of thousands." Achish summoned David and said to him, "As Hashem lives, you are an honest man, and I would like to have you serve in my forces, for I have found no fault with you from the day you joined me until now. But you are not acceptable to the other lords. So go back in peace and do nothing to displease the Philistine lords." David, however, said to Achish, "But what have I done? What fault have you found in your servant from the day I appeared before you to this day, that I should not go and fight against the enemies of my lord the king?" Achish replied to David, "I know. You are as acceptable to me as an angel of Hashem. But the Philistine officers have decided that you must not march out with us to the battle. So rise early in the morning, you and your lord's servants who came with you. Rise early in the morning and leave as soon as it is light." Accordingly, David and his men rose early in the morning to leave, to return to the land of the Philistines, while the Philistines marched up to Israel. By the time David and his men arrived in Ziglag on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid into the Negev and against Ziglag. They had stormed Ziglag and burned it down. They had taken the women in it captive, low-born and high-born alike. They did not kill any, but carried them off and went their way. When David and his men came to the town and found it burned down, their wives and their sons and daughters taken captive, David and the troops with him broke into tears until they had no strength left for weeping. David's two wives had been taken captive, Ahinoam of Israel and Abigail, wife of Nabal from Carmel. David was in great danger, for the troops threatened to stone him, for all the troops were embittered on account of their sons and daughters. But David sought strength in Hashem his God. David said to the Kohen Abiathar, son of Ahimelech, "Bring the ephod up to me." When Abiathar brought up the ephod to David, David inquired of Hashem, "Shall I pursue those raiders? Will I overtake them?" And he answered him, "Pursue, for you shall overtake, and you shall recover." So David and the 600 men with him set out, and they came to the Wadi Besor, where a halt was made by those who were left behind. David continued the pursuit with 400 men. 200 men had halted too faint to cross the Wadi Besor. They came upon an Egyptian in the open country and brought him to David. They gave him food to eat and water to drink. He was also given a piece of pressed fig cake and 2 cakes of raisins. He ate and regained his strength, for he had eaten no food and drunk no water for 3 days and 3 nights. Then David asked him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" "I am an Egyptian boy," he answered, "the slave of an Amalekite. My master abandoned me when I fell ill 3 days ago." We had raided the Negev of the Cherethites, and the Negev of Yehuda, and the Negev of Caleb. We also burned down Ziglag. And David said to him, "Can you lead me down to the band?" He replied, "Swear to me by Hashem that you will not kill me or deliver me into my master's hands, and I will lead you down to that band." So he led him down, and there they were scattered all over the ground, eating and drinking and making merry, because of all the vast spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. David attacked them from before dawn until the evening of the next day. None of them escaped, except 400 young men who mounted camels and got away. David rescued everything the Amalekites had taken. David also rescued his 2 wives. Nothing of theirs was missing, young or old, sons or daughters, spoil or anything else that had been carried off. David recovered everything. David took all the flocks and herds which the troops drove ahead of the other livestock, and they declared, "This is David's spoil." When David reached the 200 men who were too faint to follow David, and who had been left at the Wadi Besor, they came out to welcome David and the troops with him. David came forward with the troops and greeted them. But all the mean and churlish fellows among the men who had accompanied David spoke up. "Since they did not accompany us, we will not give them any of the spoil that we seized, except that each may take his wife and children and go." David, however, spoke up. "You must not do that, my brothers, in view of what Hashem has granted us, guarding us and delivering into our hands the band that attacked us. How could anyone agree with you in this matter? The share of those who remain with the baggage shall be the same as the share of those who go down to battle. They shall share alike." So from that day on, it was made a fixed rule for Israel, continuing to the present day. When David reached Ziglag, he sent some of the spoil to the elders of Yehudah and to his friends, saying, "This is a present for you from our spoil of the enemies of Hashem." He sent the spoil to the elders in Bet-El, Ramoth Negev, and Jatir, in Aror, Siphmoth, and Eshtemoa, in Rakal, in the towns of Jerahmeelites, and in the towns of the Kenites, in Hormah, Bor Ashan, and Aktha, and to those in Hebron, all the places where David and his men had roamed. The Philistines attacked Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines, and many fell on Mount Gilboa. The Philistines pursued Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck down Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, the sons of Saul. The battle raged around Saul, and some of the archers hit him, and he was severely wounded by the archers. Saul said to his arms-bearer, "Draw your sword and run me through, so that the uncircumcised may not run me through and make sport of me." But his arms-bearer, in his great awe, refused, whereupon Saul grasped the sword and fell upon it. When his arms-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on the sword and died with him. Thus Saul and his 3 sons and his arms-bearer, as well as all his men, died together on that day. And when the men of Israel on the other side of the valley and on the other side of the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned the towns and fled. The Philistines then came and occupied them. The next day the Philistines came to strip the slain, and they found Saul and his 3 sons lying on Mount Gilboa. They cut off his head and stripped him of his armor, and they sent them throughout the land of the Philistines to spread the news in the temples of their idols and among the people. They placed his armor in the temple of Ashtoreth, and they impaled his body on the wall of Bethshan. When the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard about it, what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their stalwart men set out and marched all night. They removed the bodies of Saul and his sons from the wall of Bethshan and came to Jabesh and burned them there. Then they took the bones and buried them under the tamarisk tree in Jabesh, and they fasted for 7 days. John 11:55 to 12:19. Jesus therefore walked no more openly among the Jews, but went thence into a country near to the wilderness, into a city called Ephraim, and there continued with his disciples. And the Jews' Passover was near at hand, and many went out of the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They sought for Jesus, and spoke among themselves, as they stood in the temple, "What do you think, that he will not come to the feast?" Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a commandment, that if any man knew where he was, he should show it, that they might take him. Then Jesus, 6 days before the Passover, came to Bethany, where Lazarus was, which had been dead, whom he raised from the dead. There they made him a supper, and Martha served, but Lazarus was one of them that sat at the table with him. Then took Mary a pound of ointment of spikenard, very costly, and anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair, and the house was filled with the odor of the ointment. Then said one of his disciples, Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, which should betray him, "Why was not this ointment sold for 300 pence and given to the poor?" This he said, not that he cared for the poor, but because he was a thief, and had the bag, and bare what was put therein. Then said Jesus, "Let her alone. Against the day of my burying has she kept this. For the poor always you have with you, but me you have not always." Many people of the Jews therefore knew that he was there, and they came not for Jesus' sake only, but that they might see Lazarus also, whom he had raised from the dead. But the chief priests consulted that they might put Lazarus also to death, because that by reason of him many of the Jews went away and believed on Jesus. On the next day, many people that had come to the feast, when they heard that Jesus was coming to Jerusalem, they took branches of palm trees and went forth to meet him, and cried, "Hosanna! Blessed is the King of Israel that comes in the name of the Lord." And Jesus, when he had found a young donkey, sat thereon, as it is written, "Fear not, daughter of Zion, behold, your king comes, sitting on a donkey's colt." These things understood not his disciples at the first, but when Jesus was glorified, then remembered they that these things were written of him, and that they had done these things to him. The people therefore that was with him when he had called Lazarus out of his grave and raised him from the dead bore record. For this cause the people also met him, for that they heard that he had done this miracle. The Pharisees therefore said among themselves, "Perceive you how you prevail nothing? Behold, the world is gone after him." Psalm 118, 1-18. O give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, because his mercy endures forever. Let Israel now say that his mercy endures forever. Let the house of Aaron now say that his mercy endures forever. Let them now that fear the Lord say that his mercy endures forever. I called upon the Lord in distress. The Lord answered me and set me in a large place. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do to me? The Lord takes my part with them that help me. Therefore shall I see my desire upon them that hate me. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in man. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in princes. All nations compassed me about, but in the name of the Lord will I destroy them. They compassed me about, yes, they compassed me about, but in the name of the Lord I will destroy them. They compass me about like bees. They are quenched as the fire of thorns. For in the name of the Lord I will destroy them. You have thrust sore at me that I might fall, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and song, and is become my salvation. The voice of rejoicing and salvation is in the tabernacles of the righteous. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. The right hand of the Lord is exalted. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. I shall not die, but live, and declare the works of the Lord. The Lord has chastened me sore, but he has not given me over unto death. Proverbs 15:24-26. The way of life is above to the wise, that he may depart from hell beneath. The Lord will destroy the house of the proud, but he will establish the border of the widow. The thoughts of the wicked are an abomination to the Lord, but the words of the pure are pleasant words. I want to speak to you today from our reading from 1 Samuel 29-31. And we'll start in chapter 29, verse 2. The Philistine lords came marching, each with his units of hundreds and of thousands, and David and his men came marching last with Achish. The Israel Bible commentary to this verse reads as follows. It is certainly impossible that David would have been willing, as this verse implies, to wage war against Israel. Though he was fleeing from King Saul, David remains completely loyal to his people throughout his travails. In this instance, he feigns loyalty to Achish and uses the advantage gained by his trust to spy against the Philistines, gaining information which will later help him defeat this enemy. This is reminiscent of a more recent Israeli spy, Eli Cohen. During the 1960s, Cohen managed to infiltrate the highest echelons of the Syrian army to spy on Israel's behalf. He provided the IDF with critical information that would assist Israel in the Six-Day War and enable it to liberate the Golan Heights. Though Cohen was captured and executed by the Syrians, the state and people of Israel continue to benefit from his sacrifice to this very day. The Golan Heights is home to flourishing communities and provides great strategic value to Israel. Now, as we go forward into chapter 30, we have a situation where David and his men arrived in Ziglag, and on the third day, the Amalekites had made a raid into the Negev and against Ziglag, and they had stormed Ziglag and burned it all down, and they had taken the women in it captive, lowborn and highborn alike. They did not kill any, but carried them off and went their way. So this is reminiscent, not nearly as severe or as horrible, but it's reminiscent of what happened on October the 7th of 2023. There were 1,200 slaughtered, murdered mercilessly, and then another 1,500 that were taken captive as hostages. So in verse 4, David and the troops with him broke into tears until they had no strength left for weeping. Now the men had become very angry with David, and they blamed him, and they were ready to stone him on account of their sons and daughters. But this is what I love about David. David sought strength in the Lord his God. And in verse 8, David inquired of Hashem, shall I pursue those raiders? Will I overtake them? David was a man of prayer. He obviously had a true relationship with the God of Israel, and he would inquire of the Lord often and frequently and seek his counsel and seek for his direction. So the Lord answers him and says, pursue, for you shall overtake and you shall rescue. You shall recover everything. So here's the application. Sometimes in life, we experience some kind of a major reversal. It can be that you lose your job. It could be that you go through a divorce. It could be that you can't make the bills. And when these things happen, we want to follow the pattern, the principle of how David walks this out. He inquires of the Lord. So when you come under attack, some kind of a spiritual attack, we need to inquire of the Lord. Now in verse 17 it reads, David attacked them, the Amalekites, from before dawn until the evening of the next day. None of them escaped except 400 young men who mounted camels and got away. So the Israel Bible commentary to this verse reads as follows. David successfully defeats the Amalekites and recovers everything they had taken. Amalek represents the epitome of evil, as they sought to destroy the people of Israel for no particular reason. In the Torah, Hashem commands the children of Israel to wipe out this evil. Throughout history, there have been continual battles against Amalek. Often it looks like Amalecch or their successors might be victorious. However, in the end, God's people always succeed. This is one of the great lessons of Jewish history. Though it may take many years, the Jewish people always overcome their enemies. So God also said in Exodus chapter 17 that he would be at war with Amalek from generation to generation to generation. But there will come a day when finally Amalecch will be utterly and completely destroyed. So the spirit of Amalecch, the spiritual descendants of Amalecch, is any people or any entity that desires to wipe out, eradicate, murder, or annihilate the Jewish people. That kind of a motivation or purpose or goal, that identifies that group or organization or entity as a spirit of Amalecch. So certainly the spirit of Amalecch was operating on October the 7th when the horrible massacre occurred, when all those murders and massacres occurred of women and children and beheading of soldiers and burning of babies. It was just horrific. That was the spirit of Amalecch. So David goes because he's inquired of the Lord. He goes and tracks the Amalekites down, and he does, in fact, pursue them, overtakes them, and recovers everything that was taken. And so there's a time to fight, and there's a time to step back and step away and wait upon the Lord. And in this case, God gave the green light to David. Go and pursue, overtake, and recover everything that was stolen. Now, I don't know about you, but I struggle with that. Whenever there's a conflict in my life, I just want to run away. I don't want to fight. I just want to let go of the rope in the tug of war and just walk away. And that's been my pattern. And in fact, when I went through a divorce many, many years ago, that's exactly what I did. I did not fight. I let go of the rope, and I just wanted to get out of the very bad relationship and bad situation as quickly as possible. But there are times when the Lord would have us to stand our ground and to fight. And the key is to do as David did. He inquired of the Lord, and the Lord spoke to his heart. Go, pursue, overtake, and recover everything that has been taken. Okay, that's all I have for today. We'll see you tomorrow. Shalom.
Adonai Vish Mereka Yair Adonai Panav Ilaka Vikuneka Isa Adonai Panav Ileka Vayaseh Leka Leka Shalom.
The Aaronic blessing from Numbers chapter 6, 24 to 26. Adonai bless you and keep you. Adonai make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Adonai lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.